All right, the first thing we're gonna do is a really basic, straight up exercise that I used to do a lot when I was younger. And you're gonna take one note per string. That's it, simple as that. So we're just gonna go 1, 5. And you're gonna play that and you're gonna speed that up. I know that sounds very basic, however, it's difficult to do considering the differences of inside and outside picking. Now, most people are going to use outside picking because they're alternate picking, they go down, up, right? Which is fine, but in a lot of cases of playing, especially if you transition to economy picking, this is going to specifically help people who are doing that and having trouble with string changes on economy. So what we're going to do is inside picking of these. And what I do is I practice them all over the place. So we'll start slow, and then we'll build up speed a little bit and see where we get. So we'll start, this is 92 it says, so. All right, that might be quick. So I'm gonna cut the time in half and start, and then we'll build up a little bit quicker, so. Inside picking, meaning up, down, up, down. Just like that. Now I'm palm muting to keep it easier to hear, but you don't have to. All right. Now we'll go in between, so. Now we're doing like a triplet feel. Now we're going to speed it up. Next string. So now we're doing sixes. All right, and now what we could do is go another speed up. So let's see, we were going, so. You want to try to keep the notes the same volume if you can. Don't go. None of that. Don't double pick like I accidentally just did either. And that'll be the next speed. It's kind of tough. Yeah, when I do that speed, I start to double pick a little bit, so that's not going to work yet. So what we're going to do is speed the metronome up itself to 100. So 100 beats per minute. Back down. All right, pretty good. Next, let's do 112. Okay, this is a tension spot. Let me stop this. What you're gonna notice at this tempo, at least I do, everybody's a little bit different, so I'm kind of assuming that. But what happens here is if you're using a wrist or a thumb technique, you might start to feel like you have to cause extra tension in your wrist or hand to make it work. And what I usually tell people at this point is to use a faster technique, but do it slowly. So for instance, if we were to use the wrist, or the arm rather, now is a good time to do that. Now it's really tough to do clean, so we might need to slow down and use the arm and then speed it back up. So let's try that. Yeah, see, this is like a break-up tempo. It's really tough to play at that speed over and over. Just even any faster. You kind of do it, but what happens is we're going to do a cheating technique, which I'm going to intentionally show you. After a certain speed, this middle area, it's kind of not a great thing to do. That's why it's so hard to play at this tempo, but it's a little bit easier to play faster sometimes. And what it is you're going to double pick the notes. When you go a certain speed, you don't really notice it, but it's a lot easier to play through them. Now, you don't want to practice this way all the time, but you want to try your best to clean it up at any tempo you can, which is single notes. But after a certain point, this starts to happen. Yeah. And it's almost like a strumming feeling, but this is going to help you also with your economy picking, because when you're running through things like that, every time you change strings, it's going to do that same thing we're experiencing here. So back to this now. If you can't get the single string, that's okay. Just practice it more. Now if we go to 138, you can almost get it, but it's really hard. I'm trying to do it with octaves, but all right. So yeah, this is the tempo part where and you can hear it. That's the problem. At this speed, you can hear it. Now, if I doubled it, double that speed, you probably wouldn't catch it as much, especially with other music playing and things like that. Not that it's the best way to play. However, I've heard some really, really great players doing this thing. Specifically, like, all right, for instance, if you have a lick like this, after a certain tempo, I think just about everybody starts going and double picks the bottom, because it's really, really difficult to lift your hand up at high speeds and avoid the note on the way back in. So, or you could go, they'll just do a pull off, but if you're going to pick all of them, they'll do that. So you get that sound. So that sort of thing starts happening. But back to the exercises themselves. I just wanted to give some insight on what starts to happen. But I do think that you should practice at the hard tempos doing those single things. That's what I did. I probably used to do a little bit quicker when I did nothing about that, and I was weird. Like for hours, I would spend hours doing these. And then the next step is to do octaves. So we're going to start there. So I'm going to slow this back down to, let's do, 84 beats per minute. And we're going to do octaves. So inside picking first, or for this. And then we'll double it. See, that's really tough for me to keep clean at the same volume. When I say clean, it's not just like extra noise, but maintaining that volume instead of getting too soft. So. Yeah, see, I'm starting to make mistakes. So that's normally that tension point where it feels like your current technique isn't working, and I want to switch to my arm. And normally I will, but I want to slow down and practice with the arm and then speed it up. But I'm not going to go through all that again because that's kind of what we were showing earlier. But those tempos where you start losing control a little bit and it feels really hard, intense, that's not always the place you want to practice. You could try for a little while, like I was just doing, but you start making weird mistakes and you don't want to memorize or have your body program those mistakes in. So slow it down a little bit, like maybe 10 beats per minute from where you are, something like that, and try it there. And that's probably where you want to practice, right to where it's on the edge of a little bit of tension, regardless of where that number is. But you're still able to actually do it for a bunch of passes without a huge issue. That's where you want to practice at, and then speed that up gradually. Don't try to force yourself into what I was just doing, like, this is improper. If I went like this and said, okay, I made it, I'd never accept that as like a clean pass at an exercise, you know? It should be sounding like... It should be like that, so... And I'm almost getting it, right? But it's not perfect. So that's when you would slow it down a little bit, like 5-10 beats per minute, and make sure it's perfect. And don't move on from that point until it's really, really nice and you can do it. Or else you're not really advancing. And I think that's one of the problems people have been having. You might be trying to push yourself too fast into areas that you're not doing a great job with. And then some people say, well, I'm stuck forever then because I can't get any faster. Well, then you want to try to maybe alter your technique like I'm saying. Instead of just using the thumb or the wrist, if you start using the arm, it makes it a little bit easier to do certain things, like snapping across here. Even though it's a really hard thing to do back and forth, and you probably find this too. What'll happen is the new technique might allow you to do it easily, and you don't notice it at first, so you need to practice that new technique slow. So I will show you that really quick. So let's say we're doing this, and you're going, and you just use the wrist. Right, and you can do that, and that's great. But what about using the arm? Like, you see how I'm shifting the whole thing? And then speeding that up. And then that's what I'm talking about. So you want to take your technique that seems more relaxed when you're playing faster and practice it at slower tempos, and then bring that up. Because there's this gap of a mid-range tempo that's really hard for everybody that you have to bridge through. So I would say you could either brute force your way through it and use your slower, normal technique and try to really push through, but that extra tension is probably not too healthy for your wrist. You could try to do it. I used to do that, and I did develop a little bit of a lump after practicing too long. It went away, but it does come back if I'm practicing hard in that speed thing over and over and over again for a very long time, it'll do it. But it doesn't happen if I'm relaxed and just using my arm or whatever technique is more natural for the faster motions. So it's up to you guys, whichever one you want to do, but I would suggest giving it a shot at least. I think it makes a difference. All right, so that was that portion of this. The next thing is to take 2 notes on one string. Actually, before I get to that, the next part of this, before we move on to that is doing another gap. So instead of just an octave, we're going to do a fourth up. I don't have to go through it a ton with you because you get the idea now, but we're going to, we'll go with the metronome together. So, try to avoid those. Let's switch it up. I'm trying to force, that's another tip too, I'm trying to force myself to do a certain short boost of speed, but stay in some kind of subdivision of rhythm so it doesn't sound bad. So. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to see if my technique's going to work out at full speed compared to slow. So for instance, if I was going slower, like, it'd be like that. So if I was using the thumb and just the index, but I was doing it at this tempo, I can't do it. Barely. So in that case, that wouldn't work out. So it's a quick way to test it. So wrist, I could kind of get arm. Messy. So the wrist seems cleaner for me. The arm is easier, however, it's sloppy, which means I would have to practice that interval jump or that string skip more with the arm. And that's what you would do. And that's how you kind of discover, it's going to be different for you, of course, but that's how you discover what you need to work on and how and isolate it. Now, the next step to this would be to go up yet another one, which I also do. So let's do those for a little bit. See, there we go. Real tough. All right, so that I would definitely slow it down. So get on the metronome with that if you want to do those. You're not often going to be playing massive skips like that, but every once in a while you will. Like for instance, if you were doing a run, and then the next line was down here, right? It's a skip. So you have to get used to jumping around. Anyway, it's not like you're doing it back and forth like a psychopath. It almost never happens. And if it did, you'd probably find some better way to do it, I would guess. It's normally like once or twice you'll have to do that. So like... like that's probably the extent of how much you would skip back and forth quick like that. So all right, now that's the end of this segment. We're going to get to the next one right after this.